So what is this absolutely rotten to the core Apple got to do with policing? Just look at it. Oh my goodness. Geez, that's not going to stay in my office for long. So what's this got to do with policing? Well, last night the BBC aired a documentary on Panorama about the behaviour of police officers, some police officers, at Charing Cross police station. What I saw, what I witnessed, I'll go out there and be bold about this, was misogynistic behaviour, sexist behaviour, racist behaviour, and criminal behaviour, attempting to pervert the course of justice. I saw that. I saw criminal assault on prisoners. And so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about some ideas I have that may help you frame your position in the police, either as a serving officer going for promotion or as a potential recruit. Because the last thing I'd want to do is to put anyone off joining what I sincerely and 120% still believe is the best job in the world. So this may help you in the recruitment process, may also help you in your promotion boards. But first of all, why should you listen to anything I've got to say? My name is Brendan from Blue Light, and over the past 31 years, I've been supporting people for recruitment process, promotion boards, and specialist interviews. I've been in the police sector now for 40 years. That's me on the end. 40 years ago, September 1985, joining the Cheshire Constabulary Police, standing next to Andy Cook, who's now His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary. Moved from there to the Bermuda Police. That's me in there somewhere over there. That's it. As a detective in their special branch. And then Greater Manchester Police, where I eventually became an inspector and had some really golden moments, like showing a prime minister around my patch because of what we'd achieved as a neighbourhood team. Anyway, moving on. So last night, the BBC aired the documentary, the Panorama documentary, and already on LinkedIn and elsewhere on social media, I'm seeing lots of officers talking about how, yeah, but it's only 0.001% of the bad apples that are causing the problem. No one ever focuses on us, the 99.009% or whatever it is, percent of officers who are the good apples, the ones that are doing amazing, awesome work. And I've no doubt that they are doing amazing and awesome work. However, I'd like to have a look at this apple analogy, because you see, here's the thing. There's a lovely, good apple. This is how everyone kind of starts off in the police. And they join the barrel, this big barrel called the police service. So the good apple joins the barrel called the police service. And the barrel, think about that as culture, the culture that contains all of the officers and staff within a particular constabulary or force. Now, I'd suggest that the majority of officers join. They've got the values that the police are looking for. They've got a similar sort of stance in terms of, yeah, I find that behaviour reprehensible. But there might be something in them. There might be something in them, some little switch that could easily get turned, where there is an element of misogyny in their behaviour, just dying to get out, where there is an element of racism that's just dying to get out. They've joined because, as one officer said in the Panorama documentary, yeah, I think it says something like, I'm a Bermondsey boy. I joined to scrap, get paid to scrapping. There's going to be an element of those officers who managed to slip through the net, especially as, you know, for a period during Uplift and during COVID, you could join the police without even speaking to a person. Seriously, you could. Thousands of people are in the police and they joined the police and they didn't speak to a real person except for their uniform fitting. One of our clients, academy clients, actually talked about the hardest question they got asked by a real person before they joined was, what's their inside leg measurement? Because they didn't know. And that was actually, they said that's the only question they got asked. That was it. So there's going to be an element of the bad apples. One chief constable I spoke to about this said, we're taking a risk-based approach. We know we're taking a risk, but it's a risk-based approach and we're prepared to accept that risk. Except that what then happens is one of those officers joins the police. They start off as a nice, shiny, good apple. They join the barrel, but the misogynistic, racist, bully within them shows a lack of respect towards others, tries it out. They test the water a little bit. They will say something to see if they get a reaction. They will perhaps apply the pressure a little bit too much on the cuffs. You know that thing. You can actually lawfully do it as a way of getting someone to comply. But there's a point at which it stops becoming lawful and it starts becoming unnecessary and unreasonable force. I know that. I've seen it happen and I've dealt with that kind of thing as an inspector. But they get away with it. No one says anything. No one does anything. Someone might even laugh at their joke, uncomfortably, but they still laugh. They get their first bruise. They get their first bruise. That's it. They've got their first bruise now. And the thing is, they just can't help themselves. They're going to test the water a bit further. So they're going to push the boundaries. The jokes are going to become even more misogynistic, more sexist, more racist. And of course, it's just banter, isn't it? The amount of times I've dealt with officers who've excused their behaviour as just banter. And don't for one moment think that, holier than thou, retired person on his soapbox about this. Look, I've been in the thick of it in the 80s and 90s, challenging corruption, challenging a sergeant who wanted to plant drugs at a search warrant, challenging a sergeant who wanted me to rewrite my pocket notebook because he wanted me to lie, challenging an officer who assaulted a prisoner, doing all of those things. Eventually, look, not everyone went to professional standards though. A lot of things were dealt with rightly at management level. The forms were completed, sent to professional standards. That's it, no further action. So I've been there. I know how uncomfortable it is to challenge that sort of behaviour, especially in the 80s and 90s, where you'd get sidelined, you'd get moved, you'd get labelled a grass, where you'd have professional standards saying things like, can't you just shut the F up? Why do you just keep having to uncover this shit? But eventually, where one of my officers went to prison for a year, and rightly so, for perverting the course of justice. And so, yeah, I've been there, and I know how tough it is, because you can stop an officer when they get that first bruise. You can stop them, but you've got to say something. You've got to do something, because if you don't, they're going to get that next bruise. And you know what? You might be able to change their value set. You might be able to point them in the right direction, because that's what we want. They were recruited because they had certain values, and we want them to be effective police officers with the right set of values. They might be able to change their spots. They might not. I don't know. But unless you speak up, no one's going to change. They're just going to keep doing what they're doing until they become this. The bad apple. Because I think the bad apples are the problem. But I think the other problem are all the apples around them. Because the thing is, the standard you walk past is the standard that you're prepared to accept. And it's also the standard that you've just become, because you've accepted this as being okay. And I know it's tough. And there's chief officers out there who talk about it being tough. There was a horrendous misconduct case just recently where an ACC said that it's understandable that officers didn't come forward because of the retribution that they would suffer. That for me was like a real own goal. That was like an ACC saying our culture stinks, because that's the barrel. That's the barrel that contains all the apples. And so I think the big challenge is learning how to and being confident to be able to challenge that inappropriate behaviour. Like I said, not all behaviour needs to go to professional standards. A lot of behaviour can get dealt with by a sergeant, by an inspector, on division, on borough, and rightly and ethically, and according to the police regulations 2020 that determine misconduct. But here's another thing. You swear your oath of office, don't you, to the King? I swore my oath of office to the Queen. And you swear to uphold the law of this land. The law of this land, under the police regulations, requires you to be impartial, requires you to be fair, requires you to show respect, requires you not to show or demonstrate unreasonable force towards others. And then we've got the Code of Ethics, again, legislation. It's a code of practice under an Act of Parliament. So that tells you the same things. And then we've got things like Code G of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, paragraph 1, as amended in 2012. How many of you as serving officers know the 4 things that you have to do, the way you need to treat people when they are stopped, searched and arrested? Yeah, that's okay, because I have so many police officers and they just don't know. I'll help you. Respect. People must be treated with respect. They must be treated responsibly. Must be treated fairly and without unlawful discrimination. It's already unlawful, but it's like they're saying it like again, without unlawful discrimination, we really mean it this time. I'd like to think we can add 2 to that, kindness and compassion, because that costs nothing. And actually the Panorama programme was kind of balanced in that way, because they did highlight on a few occasions that they witnessed so much kindness and compassion and respect from so many officers. And so here's the challenge for all of us. Are we going to be the one that accepts the first bruise as being okay. If we look at the murder of Sarah Everard, bless her soul, may she rest in peace. I'm not even going to mention his name, but his nickname on the relief that he was on was the Rapist. And no sergeant or inspector thought, hang on a minute, I've just joined this team and one of my officers' nickname is the Rapist. What's that all about? No one said anything, no one did anything, and we saw how that ended up. Now, I'm not saying every person who demonstrates misogynistic, racist, or violent behaviour or tries to pervert the course of justice is going to end up like that, but they're certainly going to end up like what I saw last night. How do I know that? I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've challenged it. I've dealt with it. And it's hard. And so for all of you who are the good apples, I would urge you to think about how you're going to display the values that the police service is looking for, how you're going to stand up to do the right thing and take that bold step at some point in your career to challenge someone else's behaviour that needs challenging. They need removing from the service, or they need to change their ways. And it's not the chief constables and the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police that are going to change this. It's you. It seriously is. It's you. Have a think about this, because in the recruitment process now, I can foresee a time when there's going to be more values-based questions, and certainly things like role plays where they may even test your mettle, because this isn't the first time there's been an undercover police officer. The secret policeman back in 1984, 85, I think it was, went undercover at the district training centre that I went to as a young police officer. And that was horrendous. And it's happened again. And how many times does this need to happen? So let's just imagine around us all the time at work, there is actually an undercover reporter. Would that influence your behaviour in any way? If so, then there's some work to do. And finally, I'll end with this integrity test, which may help those of you who are going for promotion, because one of the things you've got to do is demonstrate how you're going to enable other people to challenge and feel comfortable in dealing with the sort of behaviour that some officers, a small number, a small minority might exhibit. What are you going to do to set that culture? Because inspectors and sergeants are the ones that set the culture. Chief constables just set the direction. And so here's the integrity test. Let's just imagine the thing that you've just witnessed. You've got a difficult decision to make. You either do something or you do nothing. Whether you do nothing or do something, let's just imagine there's an audience around you of your favourite relative, your best friend, your favourite teacher, the person you admire most in history, either living or dead, the chief constable, the magistrate you swore your oath of office to, maybe even the Crown. And they're all watching you. If the action that you take or don't take would make them feel proud, then you're doing the right thing. If in your heart you know that it wouldn't make them proud, they'd be like, oh, that's not the John I know. Why is Susan not doing what she should be doing? I don't get it. Then you know you're doing the wrong thing. It's time to step up. And as a promotion candidate, what are you going to do to enable officers to be able to step up? That's the key to your successful promotion answer. What are you going to do to enable others to step up? And so if you're still not sure, if you're undecided, then go and speak to someone in the service that you know and trust. Because once you've shared with them your dilemma, your conundrum, your challenge, they can't unknow it. So even if you decide, actually, I'm going to bottle out, if they are the person who you believe they are, because you shared that information with them, then they should be the person who says, it doesn't matter what you're doing, I need to report this now, because I can't unknow what you've just told me. All of this makes sense? Listen, this isn't just my ideas. This was taught to me in 1986 by my Sergeant Don Blackest, someone who joined the police in the 1950s. 1950s. So Don Blackest, my Sergeant, may he rest in peace. What an absolute star you were. And hopefully this wisdom passed on from the 1980s will survive this millennium. And maybe some of you in 10, 20 years' time will be passing on this learning, this concept of making sure that you are the good apple that challenges the first bruise so that they don't become this. Ugh. Hopefully it's been helpful. I'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye for now.